Hey, Ian. All right, we're gonna keep finishing. I might be getting ahead of myself. We're gonna keep working on what we were doing yesterday. I really did appreciate the progress we had made in fleshing out our starting scenario. So I think we'll keep along that vein and see what we discover about what we need or what we want, what we would prefer for our campaign starter. I just made this text box. I'm on the same whiteboard area that I was before, just to reset. We I had posted a sample faction. This guy Baron Clodamar the Fourth, and we used that faction to come up with the beginnings, or at least a rough draft of a scheme that is some kind of plot in the sense of what the Baron is trying to achieve to do something. In this case, our good old Baron seeks to increase their estate, which is one of their goals from their faction sheet, by arranging the death of a neighboring baron. The neighbor, and I gave the guy a name, Baron Carloman the Bald. He's maybe having a tough time. This baron is vulnerable because they are a childless widower. However, a marriage is currently being arranged for them, so the window is to strike is narrow and closing with every passing day. So the Baron Clodamar has a goal, which is to take out Carloman. I should probably picking two C names, maybe not the best idea in the world, but we're just going to go with it for right now. Clodamar wants to take out Carloman and therefore hopefully take over his lands. Obviously, Carloman is not going to want to do that. This isn't to say that Carloman is aware necessarily that the Baron is scheming, but obviously, self-preservation is a powerful reason why Carloman would be resisting whatever this plot is. At least once it gets to the point of actual stuff, he's obviously going to resist. It's a matter of life and death for him. So what we didn't do last time, well, one, I didn't give this guy a name, so now we've got a name for him. I'll start to fill this in slightly. And oops, if I could spell it correctly. And then we can give some goals for him, which is not really something I was thinking about. We only really need the goals of one faction to start, because we're probably, keep in mind, starter campaign. I want to kind of, the idea is to get the ball moving, and then as the campaign develops, other things can come in. So for this first part, which is a little bit like that push out the door, that you're kind of tapping the gas, you're priming the pump, whatever, you're hitting the starter to start the car, trying to get the wheels moving. So really, since basically we have two factions. Faction A is doing something, and then Faction B is responding just for this scenario. Now, in the future, they could be going back and forth, but any given scenario could be easily be expressed as one resisting another. We talked about different types of schemes, I think. Yeah, didn't we? Kind of a race, and then direct opposition. This would be direct opposition. The race would be if there was something lost out there and both barons are trying to find it for some prize, then that would be a race. In this case, it's opposition. The Clodamar is doing something directly against Carloman, and the party is going to get involved some way, somehow, into that. In terms of power levels, I'm going to make him just a little bit weaker than the other one. I think this makes sense for a couple of reasons. While on the one hand, it's great to have the two factions that are sort of evenly matched to each other, I think at least my thinking, the idea is that the party is going to end up working for Carloman. That's how I would present it, or make that the more, I don't know if attractive option is the one, but Clodamar is not looking for help. He's got his scheme, he's got his manpower, whatever. Who might need help is Carloman, and therefore making him weaker, someone who might need help, is going to push him to put out the feelers for, hey, I need some extra hands. And that's when the party shows up. So I'm going to make him a bit weaker. So he's not going to have the same amount of resources. He does have that same noble standing. He is a noble standing. I would say he's an honorable person. And that's it. Sorry. Sorry, pal. That's it. That's all you got for you. You don't have a lot going for you, but you got that. Goals. Oops. His goals would be to secure the future of his house, right? He's going to get married. He's got that. He's on track to be doing that. Secure the future of his house. I'm not sure. I mean, we could think about. I'm just going to do one. Let's just give it one because I think one of the things too is we only need one. It's nice to fill them out, but in this scenario, we just need one. We really just need one for him, for this guy, and that's the one he's working on, and the other one, and then we can insert more goals as needed, and then personnel. Maybe I should even make him HD1. I wonder. I don't know. We'll see. He's going to have 2d6 levy, one, let's see, level 1 fighter, and we'll say one. He's gonna have, let's see, he's level 2. No, and then one level 2. And let's just say that he's the level 2 cleric. Oh, whoops, I meant to put the wrong guy's name in there. And we may need to update that. I think, by the book, right? If a cleric has a it's all church related, so maybe he can't be a fighter. Maybe he's just got to be. I don't know. I would allow someone who's a cleric to have a secular role as opposed to a spiritual one if they wanted to. But we'll just to be simple. Maybe he just has a cleric. We'll put the cleric here, which actually is a pretty good spot because that means that cleric won't have healing out of the box. Bum bum bum, no healing. So what is he gonna do? All right. Now we've got our two factions. Clodomar's got the edge on Carloman, but because of things, they're under the same. They have the same under the same duchyship, and they don't. And Clodamar doesn't want to go to war for this, so he's trying to look to fulfill his ambitions by other means. I'm just going to take a sip of water for the working man. It was cold, now it's more lukewarm. So now we have our two opponents. So let's see. Let's go back to Carloman's steps. We're lure the neighbor into a vulnerable place on a hunt, perhaps. Put the neighbor into contact with some monsters. Ensure the neighbor dies at their quote unquote at their hand of the monsters. That is. Then kind of avenge their death, quote unquote, and then put in a claim with the count for the neighbor's lands. So let's start. So we're gonna fill out this scenario. So that's the scheme, but let's turn that scheme into our scenario here. The party. Now we haven't talked about who the party is, where they're from, what they're coming from. I don't think we need to include that necessarily in the scenario. Obviously, if you're building this up, you've done your kind of session 0, and some of it you'll have an idea if you're playing with the player characters are all locals, or the player characters have walked in from other places, or whatever the situation is. So we're going to assume that maybe the party's coming in, and we're not going to, just for this example, I guess I should let's make a note. So the assumptions, first off, the party is not aligned with either barony. And these are not set in stone. This is really for me, so that we don't have to keep going, well, if this, if that. I don't want to do a whole bunch of trees of like, well, if they're with this, then they would do this. If they're with this, then we'll set up that. Like, we're just going to say, they're not unaligned. Unaligned. Party is looking for work. I think that's a pretty good a safe bet in yield OSR games. Certainly, when you're starting out, if you don't have a lot of cash, you're gonna need something to do. So those are we'll go with those as our core assumptions right here. And maybe they have no. Oh, I guess this too. The party has no insider knowledge of the political, what's the word, climate, neither barony. So they don't know the scheme's going on, which also makes sense. They're guys off the street. Those are just my assumptions. Of course, in any particular iteration or playthrough, get this to the table, however people are doing their characters, whatever, some of these assumptions might change, but just in terms of how we're discussing it, those are our core assumptions, which I think is I'm fine with that. Next up, we've got the starting situation. So we got a couple things, right? Let's see. So what do we got? Things. So here's the thing. How much pressure do we want to put on the situation? Well, let's see. If we really want to amp things up, and put a timeline on it. All right, let's do that. Let's amp it up. There's no reason not to go for the gusto, so to speak. So the betrothal between Carlomund and I don't know, and I don't want to say foreign, but and oh, you know what? This is actually good. And a daughter of the ruling duke has been announced. This is big. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the situation. We know what Clodamar wants to do. He wants to increase his lands. And we know that he's trying to do that at the expense of Carlomund by killing him, because Carlomund is vulnerable because he has no heirs. So if he were to die, then the Duke would have to either swallow the lands himself, which he may not be able to do, or just might not be particularly feasible, or he has to give the lands to somebody else. In the last stream, I think it was Dungeon Master Masterclass said you could do things like split the lands up. Yeah, you could do things like that, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. And I think the idea here is that these lands are not particularly vast, and that it's kind of the land plus stronghold. The stronghold plus what that land kind of commands is the thing. So anybody who's taking those lands would need the stronghold or a piece of it. Otherwise, you don't really own it, because whoever owns the stronghold is going to essentially have your lands by the nuts, because they're going to have that strong point and you're not going to have one. So then either you're going to have to make another stronghold or you're going to have to do something else. It's just a pain. So I'm just going to keep it as like it's a single parcel. It's practically speaking not divisible. Just like that's what it is. There's a castle of some sort, fort, stronghold, whatever, fortified manor house, and there's a small, but it's not insignificant, but a small parcel of land that you command from there. And then of course you've got a village, at least a village or something around you, which is giving you all your provisioning and whatnot, and supplying you with the food and such. And so Clodamar's got one. He wants two. He thinks he can get it by eliminating Carloman. Now the pressure's on because Carloman's getting married. So how can we kind of increase that? Well, if it's the daughter of the ruling duke, then it's kind of a double whammy, right? So Clodamar wants to gain prestige and raise his status in the duchy, but he's going to get leapfrogged by Carloman the Bald, who just maybe stumbling into a marriage with one of the duke's daughters. Probably going to put him on the inside track. He's going to become, in-laws to the ruling duke. That's not good. So this puts some pressure. This puts some pressure on Clodamar to do whatever he's doing, do it quickly, and react to that. So I like that, right? I think that's a good move. And we can in turn use that to generate a clock things if we want to. If you want to set up like, hey, there's a month or however long between when this betrothal's been announced and the daughter and all the right, there's got to be the pomp and circumstance. They got to set everything up and they got to rent the hall and they got to get the priest and okay, they got all this stuff takes a little bit of time. They got to arrange the whatever all the marriage stuff. There's probably some time, but that time's going to ebb away. And of course, maybe if things were left to their own devices, maybe Clodomar's scheme would just succeed. But we've got these player characters when they're potentially mucking up the works without even realizing they're mucking up the works. So there could be a lot of fun kind of dynamic stuff in there. And the bottom line is at the end of this month, whatever happens, the world will be changed in a way that we can play with because this is not just I don't mean for this just as a kind of a one shot or at the end the world's basically the same. Oh, you defeated whatever, but whatever. It's like, okay, now there's new things. Now maybe, hey, the party did a good deed and Carloman's in their debt and now he might have more stuff for them to do and they might other angles might have opened up, whatever, or maybe the Clodamar in desperation approached the party and threw something at them and they did it. Now they're in this, but or the what happens with the daughter is the daughter. I don't know why last stream I think I brought up Berserk or maybe it was the other streams, but there could be a situation where the daughter is there on the hunt for whatever reason and something happens and she's put at risk and you got all kinds of stuff, but stuff that will last past the end of this adventure. This adventure will put the party and kind of put the world and turn things a bit, and then you get to take it from there and say, okay, what's next? We've got maybe a benefactor. We potentially have a sponsor, a patron. We also potentially have an enemy. We could have multiple enemies, and so now we have kind of stuff to work with. And I think maybe it's just like I'm big on this kind of thing as opposed to necessarily. I don't know. I just like not that I'm not anti-dungeon crawling by any means, but I always kind of get a kick out of these sort of almost character driven sort of elements. And so this is kind of driven by these characters and their wants and needs. But you could absolutely throw a dungeon in there. I mean, we could throw a dungeon in this if, for example, oh man, I think like that's a good twist. I'm going to put this twist in here. It might be too much. I don't want to get into overkill. But let's just get this idea out there before I forget. I don't know who the monster is, but maybe the monster kidnaps rather than kills the daughter. Carloman. We don't know who the monster is, but maybe the monster actually kidnaps rather than kills, or that's their plan. Which leads to, if you got to go to a lair, then you get to go to a lair kind of thing. Because a lot of this is taking place, presumably sort of out and about. But it means that if the monster is successful in their attack at the hunt, we have another. It's not just, oh, they're dead and they're killed, which would be fine, though. But we just add more of like, maybe the monster is going to decide they want more of a cut. Or, potential double cross. Oops. Right, potential double cross. That they know they're aware of what they've got, and they've decided, you know what? We're not going to kill them because now we have some leverage. Or we can pull them out and say, look what Clodamar forced us to do, O Duke. And Clodamar's up a creek. So I like that angle. Hey, Jason. I think you came, weren't you, Jason? Didn't you ask similar questions the last time you joined, which I think was just yesterday? We're working on the same thing. Or let me know if am I confusing you with someone else? Was there Jason 96? Well, that's you now. Was there Jason 95 or Jason 97 here last time? But same thing. Working on the starting scenario. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall. So we got the starting situation. We got the betrothal. And so, okay, Jason. So it's still you, still the same thing, same continuation of yesterday. All right. Starting situation. Betrophal's been announced. Festivities are being planned. And Clodamar uses the opportunity to plan a grand hunt in honor of the coming nuptials. I spelled that wrong. How did I spell it? No, that's not it. So that's the thing. So now he's Clodamar, if we can imagine, doesn't like what's happening. He's been sitting there going, tenting his fingers, going, how can I get that land? I've got it. I will kill Carlamund and take it. And then messenger comes in by pigeon, raven, whatever, or just man on horse, hands him a little scroll. He pops it open and says, we would like to announce, we would hereby like to invite you to the wedding between Carlamund the Bald and I don't know what they would call. I don't know what the daughter of a duchess is called, and Lady so and so. Please RSVP below. Blah blah blah. And now he's sent into an almost panicky kind of rage because you can see now that if those nuptials happen on time, then he's out. He's boxed in. Doesn't feel like he's got anywhere to go. So now he's got to think quickly, and he decides to send out his own invitation saying, hey, I'm so happy you guys are getting married. Before you do, Carlamund, we should go on one last grand kind of bachelor hunt. And we'll hunt something fierce. Maybe there's some kind of quasi-mythical white stag or something to go after. We shall hunt for a white stag. And our lands join and there's some wilderness around. So we shall hunt for a white stag in the woods. And it'll all be awesome. And then secretly he's arranging through one of his goons to get somebody in there in that hunt to take care of Carlamund. And then so we'll add to the starting situation. So Carlamund can't refuse the invitation to the grand hunt. I'm going to capitalize it, the grand hunt, but is spread thin due to preparations for the wedding. Why is it? I want to spell it. Terrence, I'm not a nerd. Nerds are smart, are they? I don't know. Words don't mean things like they used to mean. Everybody's smart in their own way. Well, at least most. I'm shaking my table again. All right, another sip of water here. All right, starting situation, the betrothal has been announced. Festivities are being planned. Clodamar decides to host a grand hunt. Nuptials. Carlamund cannot refuse the invitation to the grand hunt, but is spread thin due to preparations for the wedding. In need of hunting. In need of I don't even know what you would call it, a hunting entourage. Puts out a call for some able Body folk. Bruno says, hey, the party's looking for work. Wouldn't it be better to start the adventure with the party already hired? So no chance for them saying no? You can. Yes, you totally could. It's really going to be very somewhat table dependent. If I'm running kind of a long term, if I'm running kind of a long term table, I don't mind them saying no because I'll have a couple. I might have something else going on, and therefore things will just kind of go approach, go just will go sort of along until either they don't do anything and things happen or they took on. But it's probably a good point. I would say probably for myself, I don't necessarily need it, but yeah, it's probably a good idea. You're probably right. For most starting folks, yeah, putting them in the work thing as part of their situation would probably help. Yes, I'll make that note because yeah, for myself, I usually am okay with leaving it open, but that's me. Probably as your starter, that's a good idea. We should just say they're hired. Um, I'm just gonna put for I guess for true starters, I guess for a or better, they are already hired by Parliament. But yeah, it's gonna be yeah. I agree with you. I would think for most starters, that's good. Yeah, because it's a good thing to be reminded of, right? Because I have my personal ways I like to do things, and then there's ways that might be better to do things. And in this case, the way I usually would do it was leave it open, and as the party is though the party's figuring out kind of what they want to do, things are happening here, and then oftentimes the players will get kind of sucked in. But yes, you're right. You are correct. They should probably already be hired by Carlamund as maybe as just extra help who he then needs. So I'll just make it out. Or the party already hired is drafted into the hunting party. Might make more sense. Terrence says they find their groups only say no to an adventure hook if it's delivered as part of a number of hooks. Otherwise, they generally roll with it. Yeah, I mean it's a little bit of that illusion of choice at this beginning because if you come into the town and there's kind of one thing going on, and it's like, hey, we're looking for work. It's like, oh man, well you better go see Carlamund. Everything else is kind of whatever. And then okay, there's one thing to do. Then you're like, okay, well we're meant to do this, right? So it's probably is more honest just to put them in there as opposed to saying no, unless you really want to give them the choice of saying no. Now, usually, like I said, in my kind of home game, I would totally be open to the party saying no, but I'll have a couple other things that I've just kind of plunked on the map. And if they say no and decide, well, we'd really like to explore that tomb over there instead, I'll say, okay, and I'll go to the tomb. And then just this thing will just be happening in the background. And then if they decide to interact with it, they do. But that's me. And I think I wouldn't want to send somebody down that path, especially for their first couple times doing it, at least their first time doing it. So, yeah, I think Bruno's on the money in terms of just stardom already being hired. But yeah, I mean, you know, you don't want to generalize too much, but most people at the beginning of a campaign are pretty cognizant of, hey, let's see what's out there and do it. But yes, you can avoid that kind of song and dance of meet in the tavern and are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? By just saying, hey, you're there. They kind of start at the beginning of the dungeon. In this case, there's no dungeon at the center of this, but it's hey, you start already hired. So yes, well pointed out. Okay, so we got the assumptions. We got our starting situation. Great. Now we need. Let's see. We have the adventuring area, which is going to be the wilderness, some area of wilderness, or I guess I could call it the hunting grounds. I don't know, it's hunting grounds, but I'll call it the hunting grounds. The grounds of the grand hunt. Hey, not nothing. You can go back to the beginning or go to the beginning at the end, whichever suits you better. And this is where this is basically the area where the ambush will take place, where the monster ambush will take place. And then, you know what, it might be good. I'm going to put the lair in here anyway. We've got the lair, which is the home of the monsters. And the reason why this is whoops. Why am I not? It's not giving me the. Oh, there it is. This is actually a good location because even if the party were to succeed in taking down the monsters, they're probably going to want to find out who sent them. And so the idea they could track back to a lair where there might be some other monsters, some other thing, and get a sense of what's going on. Or even, oh, this is good, because if the monsters fail, then probably one of Clodomar's henchmen is probably going to try to get ahead of there. You can actually have a little bit of a race. A race to the lair, as the Clodomar's guys might go in to try to clean it up, make sure there's no incriminating evidence laying around, while the party might be going there to try to find evidence. You can have kind of a mini, you should put that in there, a mini race as part of this. I'll make a note. If the ambush fails, the party can track them back to the lair to find evidence of conspiracy and Clodomar's lackeys also head to the lair to eliminate any evidence of the Baron's involvement. Okay, so we're getting some. We're you know I think we got a good. We don't have the we haven't set the refuge yet. All right, where the party's going to rest up. I would imagine that if we're starting them in Carloman's, we could probably get to give him a house name, but in whatever village. Carloman's Keep. I'm just going to put that right there. So we've got a refuge. We have a lair. We have the adventuring area. We've got the starting scenario. We have some ideas of how the enemy or how the antagonistic faction is going to respond to stuff. What we don't know is, well, if he wins, if the monsters succeed, they're going to try to double cross Parliament. We don't know who the monsters are yet, but I'm going to say they're kind of intelligent. So they might be. I was actually thinking dwarves for some reason, some kind of angry dwarves. I find sort of appealing. So maybe that will be. That might be the way to go. I don't know. We can figure it out. I don't know why they have to be angry, but it's just some idea. Some just sort of angry dwarven mercenary types, soldiers are going to try to pull this out. Don't know why I think that, but I do. And then we've got the lair. So if the ambush, so I should put another note here. If the ambush succeeds, the monsters will kidnap Clodamar and or the Duke's daughter and hold them ransom, blackmailing. Oh, no, not Clodomar. Parliament. I could roll on the. Yes, I could. I'm trying to make this sort of agnostic of any different material. So yes, you could absolutely for yourself. If you want to roll on the table, on a table in the Tome of Adventure Design to figure out the monsters, you can. I'm trying to be agnostic of sort of tools like that for this exercise. Because the idea with this is really sort of, hey, do it yourself. This is a true do it yourself. And if I turn this into some tools that I can then pass on to folks, I want it to be basically self sufficient. No, that's not the word. Self contained. But yes, you could use whatever monster manual, fiend folio, tome of adventure design, whatever kind of monster book you've got, monsters, whatever the monsters reimagined. I don't know, whatever anything you want, you can absolutely use those to figure out the monsters. I mean, maybe I'll just go with angry kind of dwarven soldiers because I don't know. That's what I've got, and then that could be something. I don't know why I'm zooming in and out like that. All right, let me read this back. Our scenario: the assumptions, the party is not aligned. Well, we'll have to change. We can change that. Potentially, they are aligned. Oops. I cross this out. Do we have a cross out? What is that? Nope. All right. We're going to assume that the already hired, maybe I should just bold and underline that. We're going to go with that. Hired by Carlamund. Well, it is supposed to be a fully fleshed out adventure. I just haven't gotten, the tools, I'm trying to come up with a thing. I'm going to be fleshing it out. We are fleshing it out. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to, I want someone to be able to bring whatever they have or their own imagination to the thing. I don't want to say, hey, now go to this other you got to go to this other thing to get the monsters or what. I guess when you go to a monster man, you're doing that anyway. But I mean to be agnostic and not go to a certain other tool. It is going to be fleshed out. I don't know if on these streams I'll go through and draw up maps and things like that. I don't know. We'll see, and we'll see. But the idea is that it's pretty fully fleshed out to run. And I could run. I could say this. I could run this now. This to me, I could run. It's got enough stuff that I can a little bit more prep, or not. Even if you handed this to me and gave me a couple hours to think about it, I could probably have it running. But I'm not going to end here necessarily. But the idea here is to get the starter campaign, right? We're trying to start a campaign, and this is kind of like, what is the spark? What spark can we generate? What spark can we generate to kind of get the campaign flowing? So I will at some point. I'll set on what the monster is. I'm going towards, I don't know, dwarven mercenaries, dwarven mercenaries. I think I kind of like. They might not be by the book, whatever book, depending on your book, dwarven mercenaries. But I don't know why the idea that they're dwarves just sort of appealing to me. So maybe I'll write them in. But we're just doing kind of everything in sort of steps. So the big thing right here is to get the bones in there, right? So well, the bones we have right now. Because remember, before I was talking about in the earlier streams, talking about kind of what do you need to start? You need sort of a hex of land. You need a couple of factions. You need something, some kind of scheme. You need a starting situation. You need a refuge. You need some kind of venturing area and maybe a lair. And we've got all that now. Like now we have all we have a starting situation. We're in this hex and maybe a 6 mile hex that shares a couple of, if you can imagine. Well, let's see. I don't, one thing I don't like in Ouija is their drawing thing. I just don't dig it that much, but whatever. So if we've got, I don't know how this is going to look. We got our flat top. Oh, Ugh, that's an horrible, horrible, oof, horrible one. No. Oh my God. What is, all right, if we've got that. And then I've been enjoying 3 mile hexes, which I think would be more. I know I mocked it up in, was it in, so you kind of get something like this. Sorry for my horrible. All right. And then let's see, can I change the color just to, no, that's not it. Does it not have colors? All right, so then these would kind of extend out that way. Okay. I don't know what. No. Anyway, something like that. So you can have, let's erase. Oh, what are you doing? Stop. Okay, you're gonna erase it. Oh my gosh, stop doing that. Got something like that. So we can put let's see, maybe, oh, I don't know. Well, I guess first of all, this would be kind of, oh, no. Oh, that's why. This would be kind of 6 mile. You're killing me, Ouija. You are killing me. Can I make this bigger? No. And then these interior ones are 3 mile, kind of like that. So you could put one guy's castle in here. I know, beautiful artwork. And then maybe we would put Clodamar, since they're sort of the hero of our story. We could put them sort of center stage, like this. Oh, that's a horrible. I apologize for that. Then maybe there's let's say there's a duchy here, and so maybe there's a, can I change? Is this the color? Oh, there it is. So we can go to gray, we could put a road. Oh, let's say that there's road, road. Maybe it continues off kind of road. And then there's, hills, 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 and trees, trees. And then let's also put a, oh, let's put a river. Something like that. So we've got see, A, and here we have the L. Hopefully, yeah. Actually, I should probably use a different color. Well, let's change that color to red. The A for Carlemund, and then the L for Clodamar. There we go. Does this make sense in terms of the map? Sorry, it's extraordinarily basic. So you got these two guys, and maybe we could say that the duchy extends out over this way. If we had to color in kind of duchy areas. Oh, there's a duchy. Here's some kind of wilderness. That tree looks terrible. It looks like I tried to put a star and just got, or like an anarchy sign that went awry. But you can kind of see how that's kind of color these. Color these brown hills. The brown hills of Dover. But really, in terms of mapping, like you obviously you can make maps a lot prettier, but this does give you all the basic information you need. Green and green. There we go. Before you know it, I'm going to sit there and spend the next hour fiddling around with the map. So we get the map. I'll put, and let's see, what other colors can I have here? And so the great hunt is going to be somewhere here, right? This is the ambush. X marks the spot. They're going to go, they're going to cross the river, and they're going to go try to find the white stag, the great boar, whatever it is that they're out there to hunt. And then that's where, they're going to get ambushed. And then maybe there's also a layer in here, which is where these, in my mind at this moment, some devious or just angry dwarf mercenary soldiers are hiding out. So we got a couple of branching things which I like. Not that the adventure has to follow any of these, but we've got an idea of how the sides are gonna play it. Obviously, Clodamar, he's got to make this move. We don't know how he came into contact with some dwarven mercenaries. Maybe they got something else going on. They may have some grand plans. That's something you could definitely look at in terms of, well, for the future. Remember, we're trying to start a campaign. I just want to run a one shot as well. Who are these dwarves? Were these dwarves part of a greater dwarven force, or are they somebody else? Like, what is going on? What's the connection between the dwarves and this duke? We're not sure. We don't know yet, but we have an idea of a couple of moves that Clodamar is going to do. And I think we can imagine, even if I don't spell it out for you, I imagine that if let's say that the monsters plot fails and the party is Johnny on the spot and they track the monsters back, maybe even the monsters, maybe some of the dwarves, they run away, they retreat and they go back and the party catches up to them. The dwarves probably won't fight to the death, so the party can subdue them or at least show them that, hey, we're stronger than you, we're better than you, and everything else. Then maybe the dwarves will even agree to talk. At some point, Clodamar's guys are going to roll up, and if the party's around, they're going to try to maybe put the party down. Certainly, they're going to try to put the dwarves down before the party gets there. But if they can't, and then if they realize the party's gotten there and then left already, then that might set in motion even more kind of plotting that can happen. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot of flexibility in the scenario for how it could play out, depending on what the party does, depending on just how they succeed at certain things, and then how the different factions react. And in this case, we kind of have a third faction, which is the dwarves, or the what we're calling AKA the monster faction, the dwarf faction. Really, in this case, Carlemund is basically, that's really the players faction. So you can make an argument. The players are really a sub faction at this point, as we've determined, as Bruno pointed out. Hey, we should probably start the party just working for Carlemund, which puts them as part of Carlemund's faction. So that faction is kind of the player faction. unless unless the party decides to kind of go their own way for one reason or another, and then that can happen. Then we have this kind of monster faction, which I guess I'm going to call the Dwarven mercenaries. Dwarven mercs. Maybe it's an old mine. Actually, I'll just make that its own point. Oops. I didn't mean that for you to be a title. Okay, so now we've got our lair kind of fleshed out. We've got the Dwarven faction. Now we could think about, well, how many dwarves do they have? So I suppose we could Dwarven mercenaries. Let's give them some resources. I mean, they're desperate, which is just in terms of they'll do anything, right? They're desperate, and I'll give them that they're cunning. Let's just say that. Their goals. Oops. Their goals are to gain power. Oh, what's the other thing? Should we give them a side goal? I'm just going to put, we'll leave it blank for right now. I feel like that's what they're going to try to do through this. And then we got their personnel. Or no, we don't have their personnel. But we can set their personnel. Let's see here. How many HD we think these? I don't think I think we'll give them HD2 also. 2d6. Dwarven soldiers. 1, 2, level 1 dwarves. I'm just using BX, so you could replace this with whatever. 1, level 2 dwarf. One thing that's nice about this, again, I don't know I'm going to keep these numbers, but I like it because you can really quickly just kind of just get the scaffolding of a group. So now, like, setting them up as a faction means that when I'm looking at, well, who is ambushing, who's doing this ambush here, I kind of have some rough, what is that, rough numbers I can play with. I don't know what that is. There we go. I just have some kind of rough numbers I can play with already. It's like, okay, well, who's doing the ambushing? Maybe they send level 1 dwarf and some number of the dwarf soldiers into the field. And then when I look and say, okay, well, those guys have been eliminated. So who's back at the camp? The leader, maybe, and then one more of these, and then whatever's left over. It's like, I have some numbers. I got some numbers kind of straight up. It was just kind of fun. Like I said, and I could play with, I probably will play around with the numbers. I don't know if that's too much or not enough or whatever, but you've got them. We've got them. So what else do we need to do besides just however much more? So in terms of the adventure, so just, if we were going to fully flesh this out as a standalone adventure, right? There's wandering creatures I might want to do for, especially at least the hunt area. Like we're on the hunt. Well, what are they going to find? What is the actual ambush going to look like? I imagine Clodamar or his associates will figure out where kind of the good spot is, where things will be most vulnerable. They've probably got some way of staging things. At least send out a false signal, do something, try to get the Duke kind of by himself, or not the Duke, Baron by himself. Hey, Screaming in the Dark, thanks for the sub. Welcome aboard. So we have some things we can kind of flesh out here, but I think I really like where this is at in terms of the scenario, in terms of getting some pieces on the board that we can play around with. It's some of those pieces who are not just disposable, depending on how you want to play it. The dwarves as the kind of intermediary enemies may or may not be somebody that doesn't survive through the adventure because the party defeats the ambush, goes back to the lair, takes care of them there. So there's just no dwarves left. Are the dwarves part of something bigger? Something to be thought about. Something to be thought about too. How did Clodamar get into contact with the dwarves? Like what's going on there? Is there a larger dwarven kingdom somewhere? Are those dwarves, were they sent by somebody else? Did Clodamar reach out to someone else, and that person then sent the? Is there a sorcerer or some kind of force out there that Clodamar has petitioned, who is maybe their mentor, their patron, their whatever, who set up these dwarves? And if the dwarves fail, then that angers that person, does some other things. Does Clodamar then owe something to whoever this person is? Right? There's just lots of angles. I don't necessarily think that, okay, we got to come up with all this stuff. And this is something that maybe if I were to write this up to present to somebody, I might leave this up as questions. This is the stuff where you just keep building on it as you're playing through it. But I think that kind of campaign seeding, you've put the players in a situation, stuff's going on. They can interact with that stuff in different ways. There's no fail state. If Clodamar wins, then that means something for Carloman, that he's dead. And then what does Clodamar do next? Does he want to, if the party survives but Carloman is dead, does he want to eliminate the players? Do the players feel some sort of loyalty and try to solve the mystery, which can still be solved because the evidence will still be there, especially when the monsters decide to blackmail Clodamar? There's still angles there for things to go. If they win, they're victorious with Carloman. Well, what is Clodamar's next move? He is now an enemy. Who did the dwarves ally to? Do they have something else going on? And so we can keep building things up. Heck, maybe this mines that they're in. A lot of times people say, like, well, I want to stick a dungeon in here, like a mega dungeon or something. Maybe this mines is really a big complex, and the dwarves are just in the surface of it. So you can have some kind of blocked entrance to something deeper, so that the party gets in there and they deal with the dwarves and they're poking around. They say, oh yeah, there's some stairway, it looks like it goes deeper into the mountain, deeper into the hill, into the ground, but it's been blocked off, and you could come and unblock it, and then who knows what's waiting below, which is another kind of nice little seeding if you want to throw whatever dungeon you want into there. This can just be kind of the top level ruin bit that leads to some bigger piece down below. So lots of directions we can take it. I hope this was helpful. I think we made a lot for not doing a whole bunch of prep necessarily. I think we got kind of a lot going on. I think we kind of answered a lot. I think we got a lot of what I was trying to kind of think about, in terms of laying out, okay, what do I need? I feel like this kind of this sort of makes me feel confident in what I was saying before in terms of laying it out. I'm like, yeah, I think this is a good seed. It hasn't taken a lot. I need to think about some stuff. I mean, there's some prep you want to do. You could make tables for stuff. You can roll tables, but you probably need to prep something up. But we only have one 6 mile hex here. I like 3 mile hexes, so I just divvied up into 3. But in terms of 6 milers, we've got kind of one outer 6 mile hex. All this stuff is just taking place in, which is fine. We've got some factions that we've set up, 2 or 3, depending on if whether we just consider Clodomar's or Carloman's faction, the player's faction kind of thing. We've got some interesting interplay between them. We have some plots that they're each trying to do. We have different ways that it can go that all lead to sort of further adventures. And of course, I only talked about briefly, but we haven't even gotten to, well, hey, you have the Duke and the Duke's daughter. And if the Duke's daughter, lady, whomever, gets kidnapped or something happens with her, then obviously then the Duke is now maybe involved, which is another layer to it, another faction that can become involved and who might happen with there. And of course, depending on what threads the party wants to chase. They're really intrigued by the dwarves, and you can always do the tropey thing, but I like it, but it is a trope, right? Of like, oh, there's a letter. You go to the dwarven hideout and you find the chest, you open the chest, it's got a letter saying, see me after this, whatever, signed, Senior X. And then the party, ooh, who's Senior X? And that's the thread they want to chase after. Great, they can do that. If they're successful, then we could probably look at it and say, well, what are these guys going to want? Whoever their boss is, whoever their patron is, well, what's next for them? Or do the party want to strike out on their own? I think there's a lot of possibilities. And that's what I want out of that starter, right? I want that starter to be like, okay, you've done something, and then it kind of opens the world a bit to you. And then as you kind of get through all the ramifications in that world, then you can keep opening up the world wider and wider and wider. So I think it does that. So I don't know what I'll do with this. I will probably do something with it. I'm not sure. I got other things I got to finish up first, but this was a really great exercise. I hope I don't know. I'm going to say, I feel like it's a strong word to say. I hope it inspires you, but I hope you can look at these 3.5 hour streams all told together and say, hey, look, in a very inefficient 3 to 4 hours, we were able to put together basically what I think is a good campaign starter. And we didn't set up the pitch, but I don't even think we put that much work in. Putting in this kind of amount of work and then saying, okay, now we have enough here to pitch it. I think we could. I think we probably went beyond what I would say is preferable for pitching. I probably would have wanted to pitch it right after I got to maybe from last week what that starting scenario is before I went through more of this. But still, even if we did this amount of work and then say, okay, sat back and say, all right, I've done this 3.5 hours, 4 hours work, let's say. Now I'm going to pitch this idea and see who bites. And if it bites, then we can get into statting things out and creating maps and doing that whole thing. Though you don't really need too many maps. This is all in the wilderness. You can make a wilderness map. If you want to make a kind of a map for where the ambush takes place, you can. I play Theater of the Mind, so I probably just want generically where it is. I don't necessarily need super amount of specifics, but you can map that out. Obviously, you can map out the dwarven cave lair. If you want to map out some of these kind of castles, keeps, for if the party decides to go in and go like, if Clodamar wins and the party decides to go like Ronin, like whatever, the 47 Ronin, and take out Clodamar, then you might want to map out the keep, but you might not need it. I don't think the villages and things like that need maps. You're in a good position, and I think you've got room. You've got potential to keep going from here, which is the whole goal. So hopefully that was you found it worthwhile. Either way, anyway, whichever way, let me know what you think in the notes, in the comments, in the chats, and the comments, and social media, wherever you can find me. Let me know. Let me know if you found this useful. If there's things you think I missed, if things you think that could use more delving into, I am happy to do it. As always, I'm here for you. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. Talk to you later. Bye now.